Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. It's Wednesday, so we are here for this week's edition of the Hump Day Hiatus. And this month, January, we are focusing on the core element of a body trust practice that's rooted in redefining what healing looks and feels like. And so, here today to help us explore a little bit of this is my guest, Sophia Wadowska, and she is live with us from Kamloops, British Columbia. Sophia, I'm really, really excited to have you on here. She is also a fellow body trust provider. We were in the same cohort together.
Yep.
And she does a ton of great work in the community that she's in. She's a registered dietitian and has been practicing for the past 13 years. She's also a certified diabetes educator and has been doing that for about 5 years. And then most recently, a body trust provider. So thanks so much for joining us, Sophia.
Thank you for having me, Dana.
Yeah, it's great. And so we'll kind of get things started. Maybe if you want to share a little bit with folks about what brought you to doing the work that you're doing from Health at Every Size and intuitive eating and body trust lens. So what brought you to that?
Yeah, I'm really glad I found it, to be honest. And it was more of a personal journey. Like I remember, I went into dietetics in my early 20s, so I did my undergrad, and it was all about just, I wanted to learn about nutrition, and I wanted to give people great sound advice and, kind of just lead them on their way, not realizing that there was so many layers to eating and food and eating behavior and body image. So, and my body did start changing in my late 20s. I did become bigger. I was used to being smaller up until a certain age, like probably around 27, 28. And I guess with that kind of grew my own sort of judgment towards myself in terms of how I was looking. And that affected how I practiced, because I was judging myself for being larger, and I was projecting that subconsciously probably onto clients, so using a lot of dieting messages, because that's what I was taught, and that's what you learn from society, that you got to restrict and be of a certain size. So I felt like I was failing at my own profession, and that I didn't feel qualified to do the work that I did. And I did have someone that was that said to me once, "Oh, do people take you seriously because you're not a skinny dietitian?"
Oh God.
And this was and I was probably a lot smaller than what I Nicole, what I am now. And even then, I was probably what you would call normal size. But I mean, that brought a lot of shame onto me. And that comment occurred 10 years ago, and I still remember it, right?
Yeah.
So it was those kinds of messages that I was getting from peers and friends, and just media, right? And I just didn't feel qualified to do the work that I did. I don't know how sorry, it's a long answer. I don't know how I stumbled upon Health at Every Size. I really don't know. Maybe I was Googling something, and I found it. I think I ordered the book and saw it as something that would work for clients. I just thought, oh, this is great for clients, because everyone's saying that dieting doesn't work, even though I was actively trying to control my body size at the same time, because I was still under the mind frame that a health professional had to have all their stuff together. I was going to say another word. I wasn't sure if we could
Oh yeah,
swear.
you can swear. You can say shit.
Okay. So I was under the impression that, like a health professional had to have their shit together, and I had to be of a certain size and have everything and all my ducks in a row. So I didn't think of it that it could be something that I could use for myself until I discovered Be Nourished. Because through that, you kind of just pick at stuff, you like research stuff online, do some reading, and then I came across Be Nourished and thought, this is amazing. And again, I was still thinking about it in terms of helping clients,
Right.
but not for myself. So it really wasn't until I started doing some of their courses online. I did their No More Waiting and the e-course, I think, for health professionals.
Yep, I did that
I
one too.
realized that I had a ton of healing that I had to do for myself. And I didn't have to wait to be completely healed and I'll have all my ducks in a row before I could help people on that same journey. And that has completely changed how I practice. Like it's a total 180 from what I used to. Like definitely much more aware of language that I'm using, words that I'm using, resources that I promote. So it has changed a lot for me, and also introduced me to so many amazing people. So that's in a nutshell. That's kind of how I got started, and I really like you. I mean, you and I met at the training, and now we're connected and we chat quite a bit. So it's just amazing the community that you come across with too.
And I think, that's one of the main reasons why I started this, the Facebook Live series, is because even where I am in my own community in Waterloo, there are, there's a handful of people who are practicing from, a non-diet and weight inclusive lens. And so I just kind of went, I need community. And we talk a ton in our training about how important it is to have community. And so, this is really my hope for having these conversations, because the weight inclusive non-diet way is so opposite from everything else that we're taught, right? Like in your training and in my training, that sometimes you can start to really doubt yourself. I feel like when you first get into reading and kind of looking into what this, health at every size and weight inclusive approach is all about, and when someone says to you things like your weight, has so much less to do with your health than what you've been told, your first, at least for me anyway, first kind of reaction is like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's important to have that community so that you can stay grounded and rooted in your truth and what you believe, instead of, because it's really easy to get kind of swept up in all of the other stuff once you kind of leave those safe zones.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Especially in January. And here we are.
It's the beginning of it all. Luckily I've curated my social media feed to not have a lot of those kinds of images or wording. But on Facebook you always come across something one or another. But yeah, it's the year of there was a really good quote that I saw. I think it was Sonia Renee Taylor. I can't remember it verbatim, but she said something about the years, like it's a new year, I'm the same me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So having that kind of perspective can certainly make things a little bit less pressure.
Less pressure. It's so important. I can remember all the years of New Year's resolutions and, the ones especially that I set to really try to control or alter the size and shape of my body. And like, fuck, man, it's not easy. And I can remember I can remember so many times, like, just feeling like, why am I doing this? Like, why does this make sense? And is it really helpful? Because at the end of it, no matter how long I did it for, I would always feel like I had failed.
Yes, and that's how the diet industry works, right? It feeds on your failure and on your so-called lack of willpower or lack of motivation or whatever. So you do end up feeling like a failure and then being like, well, I'm going to try this thing or I'm going to try the next thing. And that's why it's so successful, because there's so many different varieties of diets out there that you want to try. It's like, this one's going to work and this one's going to work and I'll stick to it this time. But I mean, I dieted off and on throughout my youth. My youth, I'm still young, I guess, but in my teens and 20s. And, I'd start a pattern of eating or a new diet and say, this is it. I never lasted very long because it was it feels so restrictive.
I
And,
know.
and then I just, you end up so-called failing because you restrict to the point where you feel deprived. And then that makes you, just, maybe
Backlash
end up
eating.
binging or whatever. Right. Yeah. So it does backlash for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to also, like, on that note, I think it's important for people to know that that is a sign of health.
Right? Yes.
Like after a period of restriction, your body doesn't know that there isn't a famine, right? Your body doesn't know that, oh no, we're just dieting right now. Like, there's going to be more food later. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
So everything goes into, this place of thinking that there's a famine, and your brain, especially, when that happens, it gives you signals to think about food more, to seek out food more, right? And then we feel like we become obsessed about it, and it's our own fault, our own fault, when biologically it's a sign of health.
Yeah.
That's our body trying to tell us nourishment.
Exactly. And people see that as that they're failing, that they don't have the willpower. And it's like, once you start learning how to work with your body and listening to your body, then you understand.
Yeah.
Like for myself, even now being more in tune with my body and with my eating habits, there are days where, I'll have cravings, like for whatever reason. And instead of like thinking that I'm failing or that there's something wrong with me, I try and explore what that is. Like, what am I missing? Am I lacking something? Do I just feel like eating that food? And so stepping back and exploring it that way, it really does take the blame game out of the equation. And that's kind of what body trust is. Like, I mean, the name itself, right? It's you're learning to trust your body and work with it rather than against it. And that was, I think, a lesson for me, because, it's, the body is so mysterious.
Right, I know.
And we ignore so many things that it's telling us, right? So hunger is one of those things. It's like, I tell clients, like, if you're hungry, your body's telling you something. So try and listen to that and explore, instead of suppressing it or just saying, oh, I'm not going to eat past 6:30 p.m. because I'm not supposed to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, who's making these rules?
Yeah, who is making these rules?
Who's making the fucking rules?
I don't know. I don't know where
that's a whole other rabbit hole.
that can be a whole, yeah, totally. But yeah.
And so for me, it's, and like, body trust, totally. For me, it's like, we're gonna work together, my body and I, and we're gonna make our own rule book.
Yeah.
I don't even like using the word rules, because, it's more like guidelines or suggestions, because based on the time of day, the time of year, what's going on in our lives, it can all change at any given moment.
I know.
Right? It's almost like just compiling this resource of what we know to be true sometimes or often about ourselves.
Exactly. Being so regimented doesn't work in the end.
No.
Life is messy and humans are messy. We can be messy together, but it's yeah, you know what I mean.
Totally. Absolutely. And so I'm curious, something that I've kind of been touching on with a few other guests recently is, you know, contemplating what, if you can remember, what were some of the first steps for you towards kind of making peace with your body?
Mm. So, well, it was definitely that taking the training through with Beaners, the body trust training, and
Mm-hmm.
having that open up a whole world of other resources and being connected with other personalities or other people on social media. So completely overhauling that was
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't like. It's not that I like my body every day or love my body every day, because they even talk about that in the training and in other places where you're gonna have bad body days. It's just how it is, but kind of exploring as to what else is going on. But for me, I think it really was a process of learning to be in tune with what messages I'm getting from my body. So whether if it's feeling tired or if it's hungry or if there's a craving or whatever, and just recognizing that as a person walking in this world, I'm going to be affected by so many different things, like other people and situations, because I'm a highly sensitive person.
Mm-hmm.
So recognizing that about myself, it also kind of changed how I view the world and how I participate in it. So it was also learning about boundaries too for me. What can I bring out to the world, and what do I allow into my world? I don't know if that makes sense. That's kind of where I went with that thought, but
No, it totally makes sense. And I think you've hit on two really, really important pieces. So the attunement piece, right? Of starting to become aware of our bodies and what's happening within them to the best of our knowledge. And then kind of allowing that to inform how we engage with ourselves and when and how with the outside world.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And really also and because I know you, a little bit, there's also um this like ownership over whatever it is and whatever comes up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go with that. I'm not gonna second guess it anymore. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna listen to those voices that are out there telling me that if I'm hungry and it's past 6:30, there's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's being able to separate with those boundaries as well and know like that's somebody else's thing. This is my thing. This is what works, and I believe in it. And that
Yeah,
trust component of things.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. So, in terms of January and this wonderful
Mm-hmm.
season that we have upon us, is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners in terms of, say we're almost mid-January, so some folks may be starting to feel like, oh fuck, like I really don't know how much longer I can do this for, yet I promised myself I would do it for X amount of days, and
Mm-hmm.
if I stop, I'm a failure, stories, all that sort of stuff. What can, are there other ways that we can care for ourselves or health markers that we can look to instead of our size and our shape that might
Mm-hmm.
help with some of those feelings?
Yeah. So a couple things. that is coming up. So when about the whole hoopla with resolutions? So it's like new year, new me, blah, blah, blah. Like, and I used to do the same thing, and you'd make up a big list and then you'd sort of try, you'd do it and you'd so-called fail. Like there's this like, the third week of January, there's this drop off of like people either not going back to the gym or like, they're like, fuck this, I'm not going to like continue on with this. I'm whatever, diet's blown. And I think there has to be a shift in how you view this month. So you could just view it as any other month. So what were you doing in December, November, whatever, October?
Yeah.
And what's the difference between now and then? Like it really is, it's just the turn of a calendar. It's not like, yeah. I mean, you can view it as a fresh start, I sometimes, and depending on what you're focusing on. So I know we've talked about in the body trust training about like, because we're not anti-weight loss, right? It's just what are your reasons for choosing to make these particular changes? There's nothing wrong with making a change that's good for you, that can promote, better health benefits or whatever, but what is the driving force behind that? And if it's just weight loss, then I try and encourage people to like step back and just say, so you say you're doing this for your health, but you're really focusing on your weight. And if you don't do this, if you say you do this behavior, but you don't lose weight, does that mean you failed? Like, right. So and this
brings off the behavior.
Yeah, and then you stop the behavior. So I'm currently doing Fiona Willer's Unpacking Weight Science course, which is really interesting. And I'm taking my time with it because it's a lot of information. Mm-hmm. And the thing that really sticks out for me, and because she talks a lot about research. So if you're really into research, there's a lot in there.
Oh, yeah.
Weight science. But one of the things that really struck a chord with me is that she talked about a particular study that was done on a very large group of people, like I think in the thousands. And they looked at people's weight. So you had like so-called, and they looked at obviously probably BMIs because that's what we used to measure. Mm-hmm. So people that were so-called normal weight, overweight, and then larger. And looking at sort of the different health behaviors that people adopt and their health outcomes. So, probably maybe development of a chronic disease or something like that that's correlated
right.
to so-called higher weight, right? So they looked at, I think there was 4 or 5 behaviors that were studied. One of them was, I think, so like following the guidelines for alcohol intake, not smoking, moving your body. And I think there was an X amount of vegetables or fruit that you were eating on a daily basis. And I can never remember if there's a 5th one. It may be sleep, but I don't know. For sure, I'd have to go back. But they looked at if a person adopted all of those behaviors, regardless of where they were on the scale for their weight, the health outcomes were generally the same across the board. So that kind of stuck with me because, you're always hearing like, you have to lose weight in order to like, decrease your risk of developing heart disease or diabetes or whatever. So that tells me that, it's not written in stone in terms of like, if someone changes their weight, that doesn't mean that they're automatically healthy. So if you have that in mind and you're wanting to make different changes in your life, for the better, I guess, for lack of better explanation, mm-hmm. Keep doing it. If you may not see a change in your body size, but you may be feeling better, you may be like stronger physically, you may be feeling like, you're able to now run a little farther. Like, who knows? Like, whatever is a marker for you of success in terms of feeling better, then like maybe focus more on that than what the scale says, right? Because I mean, our weight does fluctuate.
Totally.
And it does kind of set you up for feeling like ashamed or feeling like you failed if the focus is just on looking at the number and not how, the changes that you are making are possibly benefiting you.
Yeah, like benefiting things that you can't even see with your eyes.
Yeah, like it could be like your metabolic health. So things like your cholesterol, your blood sugars, your blood pressure, like those things could be improving. And maybe, your weight may or may not change. Like we talk about that, right? In the training and just
Mhm.
amongst ourselves, or, if you embark on a certain behavior change, your weight can do one of three things: stay the same, go up, or go down.
Yeah,
So
I totally love that.
yeah, we talk about that. I think they talk about that in intuitive eating too. So
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I just had to get my computer card. Yeah, so okay, so for folks, we have kind of not looking at your weight and size to determine success and relying on maybe some other metabolic health measures
hmm
when it comes to that. Or you can, kind of pay a little bit more attention or become aware of your energy levels. Maybe you have a little bit more gusto.
hmm
And then again, like you were saying, maybe this time you can travel X amount versus the Y amount that you started with.
yeah,
There's so if you might be able to do one more push up this week if those
exactly.
things you enjoy doing in a way that you enjoy moving your body. And I
hmm
think that's kind of the other big piece that really resonated with me when kind of shifting what I was looking for in terms of success and um, if I was setting any type of kind of goal, um, is making it something that's enjoyable,
hmm
right? Like there are so many times, and in fact, in my personal experience, almost everything that I told myself I needed to do for my health, I resented doing.
mm
And
Yeah,
so, because we're so programmed to think that if we do things that bring us joy or pleasure, they can't be good for us.
right. Yeah,
And so, what can we do? What can we find that, we enjoy and makes us feel good at the same time?
yeah,
And it's been slowly, a process of trial and error of finding um, what I enjoy. Because if there's something that you enjoy, then that practice is far more sustainable than one
exactly.
in which is rooted in shame or punishment,
Yeah,
penance for whatever it was.
yeah. So that, yeah, like thinking about movement or activity or being physically active. Like I remember, I don't know how many times I've tried to join the gym,
Yeah.
and it just never has worked out because I actually don't like going to a gym. But I feel like I have to because that's what everyone does to like stay in shape or whatever. So that also was a change for me. It's like, how do I find something that is semi joyful, because I'm not a naturally active person. I don't really like um I was never an athlete. I am not one of those people that naturally loves to like run or jog or whatever. But I know I like to walk, and I have a dog, and I like hiking. So, those are things that I really enjoy doing, and it brings me outside, and that's the pleasure part of it. But
Totally.
I don't beat myself up over it if I don't do it every day.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But I know that it benefits me, so I keep doing it.
Yeah.
If
And
that
your
makes
puppy is so cute.
She is. She's down here waiting, like on her bed.
Like,
Like,
why
what are
don't you
you
pay attention
doing?
to me? Oh, that's amazing. So I have a question here that I'm just going to pop up on the screen. So this is from Dawn. And I hope that I'm understanding it right. So she says, I have to let go of my rules and allowing myself to eat whatever. I'm stuck on intuitive eating. I have no idea how to love eating and
Mhm.
love myself eating. That is
That's a big one, eh?
huge.
So, I know that when you start intuitive eating, that's a legitimate fear. I think is because I remember when I was first introduced to intuitive eating through a friend of mine. This was a few years before I discovered Health at Every Size,
Hmm.
and she discussed the concept of intuitive eating. And I said, "But I'll just eat whatever. Like I'll just keep eating, and I won't stop." And it just and she was like, "No, no, your body will learn." And it actually is true. Like
Yeah.
you may actually feel like, all the rules are gone, all holds barred, whatever part, I forget what the phrase is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I'm just gonna go to town on everything. And that may happen, but there will come a time your body will want you to settle. I think. Like, and you'll start recognizing which foods make you feel nourished, which foods give you maybe more energy, because that's it's a bit of an exploratory process to try and
Totally.
find out how what pattern of eating works best for me, how much should I eat at this meal or whatever, like. So it does take some time and learning, like the sort of the I mean, we talk about intuitive eating and mindful eating as being aware of your hunger, and that is one of the things, but it's not the entire thing, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so kind of recognizing, like, how is this sitting with me? Maybe I want to eat more, maybe I don't. But it does take practice, and at the beginning it might feel a bit overwhelming, and like
Yeah.
now you're just gonna sit at home and eat chips all the time. That's kind of what for me it felt like. I was like, I'm just gonna eat chips all the time.
Yeah. I eat pizza all the time. It was like my forbidden food. And so I ate
Mhm.
probably like more pizza than I've had in my whole entire life in throughout my beginning journey with intuitive eating.
Yeah,
And it did
yeah.
no harm. It totally, now I'm like, oh, I could take it or leave it. Do I feel like it?
Mhm.
Not really today. No, I'd kind of rather have this instead. Whereas before, I was like, do I feel like it? No. Am I going to eat it? Yeah, because
Yeah,
there's 2 decades of my life where I've told myself I wasn't allowed to. So I'm
yeah,
going to eat it. So it's
yeah.
kind of working through some of those emotions and those and all of that stuff that's intertwined in our relationship with some things. And
Mhm.
once we kind of work through some of those, whether we do it on our own or with the help of a professional, um, then we're able to hear the messages of our body a little bit clearer and a little bit louder because they don't have to kind of trumpet through some of those emotions and the residue from some of those rules, right?
Mhm.
That we've still got going on for us.
Yeah, and part of my journey in intuitive eating was recognizing that I didn't like the sensation of hunger. For me, it represented something missing or a loss, and I don't know where that comes from. So I would eat to excess to the point where, I guess you could say that I was a binge eater
Mm-hmm.
because um, I feared that emptiness that sort of went with hunger. So, I mean, that was my personal kind of journey with it. And I realized that, hunger can be, hunger is a signal for my body, and
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing inherently wrong with it. So that changed my eating behavior and my relationship with food. Just that little recognition, because you find out little things about yourself
Yeah.
when you start doing the work. And it certainly isn't easy, and I recognize that. So it is helpful to have a health professional or someone that is well versed in health at every size and intuitive eating to be there for you. And if you have the book, it's helpful as well. And
Absolutely.
I have the book, and I kind of take it with me. Like I travel with it, like back and forth to work, and I'll like leaf through it between
Yeah.
clients, or like, oh, I remember this. I'm going to go back to this. So, but being gentle and learning self-compassion is super important as well. Being gentle with yourself, and like because of my, because I'm such a sensitive person, and I recognize about myself that I need a lot of downtime, and just figuring out what works and what helps in that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's different for every single person, right?
Hmm.
So, and like you said, it isn't necessarily an easy journey, and it can be tough work. So being gentle on yourself, offering yourself some compassion,
Hmm.
and really, you've touched on an exploration as well, you said. So
Hmm.
being curious, as you noticed about your experience in your body, that, hunger was this kind of like emptiness.
Mm.
And then once you kind of have a little bit of clarity around it, you can explore a little bit more of what it's about and what it means to you, and
Yeah.
how to work with that, right? So there's a bit of, for me as well, it was in naming some of these things, and I found it helpful to write.
Mm.
So if something came up for me, I would say, oh, okay, I'm experiencing this. Well, what's that about? And see
Yeah.
see where it went, just to kind of, again, get a little clarity around it.
Yeah. The writing part does help. A bit bad about that though, but I like to, I mean, I analyze a lot of things and I like to talk things over with
Yeah.
people and do a lot of reading.
Yeah.
I had a thought, but it completely left my mind now.
That's
Oh, I also, in my discovery around like, or learning about intuitive eating and hunger and stuff, the work of Anita Johnson really also kind of hit home for me.
mhm.
So the book, Eating by the Light of the Moon, I think,
Yep.
and she did a really good series. I think it was recognize something about soul hunger. I'm not quite sure, but her website, I think probably has that info. But I really kind of um, liked her message quite a bit.
Nice.
Hmm.
And something else in the intuitive eating realm that I found very useful was to create almost kind of like a food dictionary for myself,
Oh.
so that I was able to learn different ways of viewing and relating to food, other than the dominant paradigm of good, bad, healthy, unhealthy. So I really worked on expanding my vocabulary around food,
Hmm.
um, and my sensory experience of food.
Hmm.
So I still, and this kind of actually started for me in a little bit of reading about some traditional Chinese medicine and food properties. And so I looked at, the textures of it, the temperature, the colors, and like whether it's crunchy and crispy and watery, like all those types of different things, and then all of the different tastes, so sweet, salty, acidic, spicy, and I started to develop this language of going, okay, what is it that my body needs? What am I feeling right now, or what's going to feel good? And I would go through some of those things in my vocabulary, in my food vocabulary, and if something grabbed me, I would go, oh yeah, crisp, juicy. Okay, what falls into the crisp and juicy category? And I would kind of just build things from that.
Awesome.
Yeah, a little bit of a different way to approach making those choices,
Hmm.
right? But from a place that isn't going to stigmatize or demonize certain food choices.
Yeah. So you were taking an exploratory approach to food, and your personal journey was around just really diving into the senses
Mhm.
around food, which is kind of, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
yeah. I don't know. It
And
works. It worked.
yeah, because and you were in tuning into what you liked and were observing, and you weren't focusing on external messages
Yeah.
of what to eat or what's good or what's bad.
Yep.
From my understanding of what you're
No, that's
describing.
Bang on. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's such a great way to articulate it, is it really helped me to tune into my own messages instead of
Mhm.
the external ones.
That's it. I might use that with clients.
Yeah, I do all the time.
Yeah.
I get them to create a food dictionary. It's super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time people will say, well, what do I eat? What should I eat? Because we're focused on what guidelines are telling us or what the food guide is telling us or whatever. So, not knowing that you can actually, the wisdom is inside
Yeah.
and you can figure out that. You're like, what do you eat? Like, what do I eat? I'll say, well, what do you like to eat?
Yeah.
Right there. What do you like? What foods do you like to eat? Like how often? And then you really get a sense of how people decide what they eat and when they
Yes.
eat. And if
Totally.
it's sort of like if they're saying things like, well, I mean, I eat at lunch because that's when I have my break and that's when I have to eat. They're not guided by. I mean, some people can't help it, but
Yeah.
what is your guiding, um, you know, force, I guess, or whatever to help
Yeah.
you or to make those decisions around food.
Yeah, totally. And if you do have those constraints, right, because of your schedule and life and those types of things, how can we, what can we do, right, to get a few pieces of this in here where it feels right? Because the other thing too is with intuitive eating is, we can turn it into an all or nothing exercise as well,
Mm-hmm.
and a success fail exercise too, right? But it's like you don't have
Yeah.
it's not an all or nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, focusing on what feels good, what you enjoy, what's going to be sustainable, and just putting those little pieces in there, small steps, small little bites.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so I am conscious of the time.
Oh,
I know, right?
wow.
Yeah.
That was fast. Holy crap.
So, is there anything else that you would like to share before we wrap things up?
Mm, I think, well, in the theme of like the new year, um, I don't know, like it's I think I don't know. Like I'm on a personal journey of really learning about who I am as a person, and that includes my food relationships still because it's an ongoing process. I
Absolutely.
just want people to recognize that as humans we're constantly changing and evolving, and to not just to practice self-compassion and to be gentle with yourself
Yeah.
and to try and surround yourself with people that are not going to be bringing you down, or like if you have a social media feed that's really diet focused, then try and like
Yes,
clean that out. And
totally.
because in all honesty, like I started following like fat activists
Mhm.
so I could become so it would become more normalized for me, because we're told to believe that fat people can't have full healthy lives, and it's
Yeah.
totally not true. So starting with like little steps like that can really help bring you more into in tune with your body, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds so simple, and oftentimes the response that I get to that suggestion is kind of like well, what's that going to do? It makes a huge difference,
It does. It totally does.
right? I don't
Yeah.
remember where I heard it, but it was, um, like somewhere around 5% of the population has that naturally, thin body ideal that's hyped up. And yet it's
Mhm.
95% of the images that we
Mm.
soak up in a day,
Yes. Yeah.
right? So, yeah, weight loss ads that are coming up on your social media feeds, report, they're spam,
Block, report, spam.
they're
Yeah.
misleading, they're offensive. I go back and forth between one of those two. And
Yeah.
really just create a space around yourself that is supportive and nourishing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Dana.
My pleasure. So for those of you listening or checking out our replay, you can find Sophia on Instagram. Her handle is Thrive at Your Size.
Mm-hmm.
And your website is Thrive at Your Size.
No, it's SophiaWadowska.com.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
SophiaWadowska.com. So I will have some links for all of that stuff in the Facebook event group with this video. And until next time, thanks so much for joining, everyone. We'll be here next week with Christina Bruce, who is currently in the process of becoming a certified body trust provider.
Yay.
Team here. So thanks so much, and we will see y'all next Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time. We'll be continuing to talk a little bit more about the January situation that's happening right now with New Year's resolutions and how we can be a little kinder to ourselves throughout. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.